Most women believe they are wise simply because they have suffered. But suffering alone does not grant wisdom. Suffering without reflection, without transformation, only breeds repetition. The same patterns, the same wounds, the same illusions dressed in different faces. What would you think if I told you that some of the most outwardly confident, socially praised, and spiritually posturing women are also the most foolish? Not because they lack intellect, but because they betray their deeper knowing. Again and again, willfully blind, proud in their ignorance, married to their projections, enslaved by the mirror of approval. You've seen them. Maybe you've been one. The woman who confuses attention with love, who thinks seduction is power, who weaponizes softness but hides a brittle heart. She chases a feeling of importance, one hit at a time, like a moth flinging itself into flame after flame, never realizing it's not light, but destruction. This woman does not know herself. She only knows the echoes of others, the curated image, the aesthetic of empowerment without its cost. And that cost is heavy. It is the cost of facing your own shadow, the grotesque, beautiful truth beneath your ego's disguise. The truth that you are not owed anything, that no one will save you, that your femininity is not sacred if it is manipulative, that your suffering is not noble if it is self-inflicted by choice. You see, the stupid woman isn't stupid because she lacks brain power. She is stupid because she betrays her own soul for the comfort of her illusions. She plays a role instead of embodying her essence. She uses men to validate her emptiness, then resents them for it. She abandons her intuition in favor of trends, movements, and slogans that soothe the ego but starve the spirit. In the archetypal psyche, she is the uninitiated feminine, ruled not by her inner queen, but by the wounded maiden. Her emotions run her. Her projections define her. Her entire identity is a reaction to wounds she refuses to name. She is emotionally loud but spiritually mute. She demands to be seen but cannot bear to be known. She fears rejection more than she fears living a lie. And this is where her stupidity lies, in her refusal to evolve. The wise woman seeks truth, even when it burns. The foolish woman seeks comfort, even when it rots. And society, drunk on dopamine and delusion, rewards the latter. It hands her likes, followers, validation, and a false sense of superiority. But deep inside, she is starving. For depth, for connection, for a reality unfiltered by fantasy. She can't sit in silence without feeling panic. She can't love without needing control. She can't rest in her body without performing for the gaze of others. She becomes a ghost wearing a glamorous mask. And here's the bitter irony. Many of these women are praised, called strong, independent, even goddess. But their strength is brittle. Their independence is a shield. Their divinity is performative. They haven't done the work. They haven't stayed down the abyss of their own projections. They haven't met the masculine within themselves and made peace with it. They still see men as either saviors or enemies, not as mirrors, not as sovereign others. They are still girls in grown women's bodies, using sexuality as currency, playing power games they don't understand, crafting identities built not from soul, but from algorithmic feedback. And yet, none of this is unchangeable. But it requires death. Not physical death, but the death of illusion. The death of victimhood. The death of the false self that was built to survive but cannot thrive. The most foolish women are not the weakest. They are often the most capable. But they are drunk on potential and allergic to discipline. They confuse chaos for passion, drama for love, visibility for worth. And they never ask the real question. What if I'm the architect of my own suffering? Because that would demand accountability. And accountability is the gateway to power. The kind of power that cannot be taken, only owned. And so, these women remain trapped in a loop, wounding and being wounded, projecting and being projected on, tearing down other women in secret competition, using feminism as a shield for unhealed pain, hiding behind trauma instead of transmuting it, complaining that men aren't masculine enough while rejecting the sacred discipline it takes to truly embody the feminine, refusing to receive because receiving requires surrender, and surrender threatens the ego. But deep down, In the quiet moments when the phone is down and the lights are off, she knows. She knows something's missing. Something real. Something ancient. Something true. And until she stops chasing the noise of validation and turns inward to meet her soul, she will remain, despite her charm, her success, her beauty, one of the most foolish women in society. She wakes up every day with a performance stitched into her skin. Before she even opens her eyes, she's already choosing which version of herself the world will applaud today. Will it be the seductress, bending attention into affection, the martyr, wearing her exhaustion like a crown, the boss, exiling her tenderness to prove she belongs in a man's world, or the spiritual influencer, masking her chaos with crystals and curated captions? What she doesn't realize is that every mask she wears reinforces the prison she claims to despise. She is not stupid because she plays the game. She is stupid because she thinks the game is real. A woman who has not met her own shadow will always fear the silence. She will fill it with men, movements, or mantras, anything to avoid hearing the aching truth inside her, that she has become what the world rewards, not what her soul requires. She is addicted to external metrics. How many followers, how many compliments, how many men want her, how many women envy her. But the currency of the ego is counterfeit, and so she spends her years rich in attention and bankrupt in meaning. This woman doesn't understand the power of self-regulation. Her moods are storms, and everyone around her must pay the emotional toll. She confuses emotionality with depth. She lashes out and later calls it just being honest. She dramatizes, catastrophizes, and then victimizes. She believes life is happening to her, never through her. And her deepest tragedy is this. She thinks her chaos is her personality. But chaos, untransformed, is immaturity. And immaturity, when glamorized, becomes pathology. She is, psychologically speaking, an unindividuated soul, fractured, reactive, and dominated by her unconscious. Carl Jung would say she is possessed by the anima in its distorted form, shallow, irrational, seductive, manipulative, and deeply insecure. Her behavior is dictated not by values, but by moods. She changes personas depending on who's watching. She mimics depth without embodying it. Because depth requires solitude. It requires the shedding of roles, the crucifixion of ego, the unbearable stillness of becoming. But she cannot sit still, not with herself. Her nervous system is tethered to stimulation, to feedback loops of validation. She calls it empowerment, but it's dependency. She's not free, she's frantic. The smile is strategic. The flotation is calculated. Even her vulnerability is often just another performance, designed to garner sympathy, not self-knowledge. The truly foolish woman believes she is exempt from consequence. She thinks beauty will protect her. That charm will save her. That youth is infinite and men will always orbit her. She hasn't yet accepted the unrelenting laws of nature and psyche. What you do not integrate, you will attract. What you avoid will become your master. And what you project, you will meet again, dressed in the faces of lovers, friends, even children. The woman who has not done her inner work will eventually destroy what she claims to want. Love, peace, connection, she will sabotage them all. Not out of cruelty, but out of unconscious fear. Her inner child, still holding the wheel, cannot tolerate the unknown terrain of healthy intimacy. So she burns bridges before anyone can cross them. She mocks the sensei. She ghosts the stable. She tests the devoted until they leave, then says, "See? No one stays." It is a tragic loop, and worse, it is predictable. Her need for control is rooted in terror. Terror of abandonment. Terror of being truly seen. Terror of surrendering the drama that keeps her significant. She has never learned how to rest in herself, to root in her own value, to sit in front of a mirror, not to adjust her makeup, but to ask, who am I without the performance? Who would I be if no one were watching? And that question, that is the threshold. Few women cross it. Fewer still return the same. Because once a woman sees the way she has betrayed herself, she can no longer blame others. Not her ex, not her mother, not the patriarchy, not society. She must stand naked before the truth of her own choices. That is the death of the false feminine and the birth of the wise woman. But most choose the illusion. It's easier, safer, louder. Stupidity is comfortable when the world calls it strength. The foolish woman builds her kingdom on sand. Pleasure over purpose, attention over authenticity, style over substance. And when the storm comes, and it always comes, she does not rise. She breaks. Because her roots were shallow. Because her identity was borrowed. Because she never learned to live for herself, only through the gaze of others. There is no greater tragedy than a woman who has power but refuses to wield it. The stupid woman does not lack power. She lacks reverence for it. She treats power like a costume, something to wear, something to flaunt, never something to earn. She confuses volume with strength. She mistakes rebellion for freedom. But a woman who screams at the world without understanding her own voice is not powerful. She is lost. Caught in the storm of her own disowned emotions, flailing for control in a life she doesn't even consciously choose. You can see it in her patterns. In the way she talks about men, all villains are fools. In the way she talks about other women, always threatened, always competing. In the way she talks about herself, either with false modesty or delusions of grandeur. She is rarely grounded. She is never still, because to be still would mean to confront the hollowness she's been dressing in gold. This is the woman who mocks discipline, who laughs at restraint, who rolls her eyes at words like honor, humility, or devotion. She calls them weak, outdated, patriarchal. But what she truly fears is what they demand, a reckoning with the parts of her that are not noble, not beautiful, not empowered. She fears the mirror of a noble man. She fears the intimacy of an honest friend. She fears the silence of solitude, because in solitude, the mask slips. And underneath all the noise, beneath the filters, the self-help quotes, the sexual allure, is a terrified little girl who never learned to self-soothe, never learned to own her anger, never learned to forgive her mother or stop trying to become her. She runs from pain, but carries it in every interaction. She wants love, but resists vulnerability. She wants to be held, but won't let herself be seen. So she resorts to manipulation, not out of malice, but out of habit. She withholds affection to gain control. She provokes jealousy to feel significant. She plays the victim to avoid responsibility. And the worst part? She doesn't even see it, because to see it would mean admitting that she, too, can be the villain. But the psychology of the unexamined woman is simple. She projects. What she cannot own, she demonizes in others. If she is lazy, she calls the disciplined rigid. If she is promiscuous, she calls the modest repressed. If she is emotionally unstable, she calls the grounded boring. It is not observation. It is shadow, screaming to be seen. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate. This is her fate. Relationships that repeat, friends who betray, chaos that follows. Not because she's cursed, but because she is unwilling to excavate the patterns within. She is emotionally impulsive. She chases highs, avoids discomfort, and becomes addicted to the adrenaline of dysfunction. The trauma bond feels like love. The red flag feels like passion. The stable man feels like boredom. Because peace is foreign to a woman at war with herself. And society enables her. Instagram calls her a queen. Her circle cheers her on when she leaves a good man for not being exciting enough. Her therapist nods while she blames her childhood for everything but refuses to grow. She surrounds herself with echo chambers, not mirrors, because mirrors are dangerous. They might show her what she truly is, not a victim, but an accomplice. The stupid woman resents women who have done the work. She resents their softness, their sovereignty, their silence. She misreads it as weakness, because her only reference for power is performance. Her only reference for femininity is seduction. Her only reference for confidence is control. But real feminine power is not loud. It does not beg, chase, or prove. It radiates. It chooses. It knows. And a woman who knows herself cannot be manipulated cannot be bought, cannot be swayed by trends or trapped by men. She does not perform. She simply is. But to become her requires fire. The kind of fire that burns away the need to be right. The kind of fire that destroys comfort and replaces it with clarity. The foolish woman avoids this fire. She'd rather decorate her cage than shatter it. And so, she stays stuck, loud, lovely, and deeply lost. A woman with mirrors all around her, and not a single one she dares look into. The stupid woman is often praised for her confidence, but it is counterfeit, inflated by applause, propped up by filters, reinforced by the echo of unhealed friends. But when the lights go out and the dopamine fades, she is alone with a gnawing truth. Her self-worth is borrowed, rented from likes, leased from lovers, mortgaged against her appearance. And one day, that debt comes due. She is terrified of irrelevance, for her identity depends on being desired. And when desire fades, as it always does in a world drunk on novelty, she has nothing left to stand on. She becomes frantic, aggressive, desperate to be seen again. But what she truly needs is to see herself, without the mask, the makeup, the curated myth. Instead, she distracts. She becomes the life of every room, yet never finds peace in solitude. She entertains, but cannot sustain intimacy. Her conversations are shallow, always orbiting the same themes. Gossip, grievances, glittering generalities about toxic people, and high vibes only. She weaponizes language to avoid truth. She says boundaries when she means walls. She says self-love, but practices self-worship. She says alignment, but refuses accountability. What lies beneath this linguistic theater is a woman estranged from her soul. She has not cultivated inner stillness. She does not know how to suffer well. She has never sat with a raw ache of disappointment without numbing it with attention or projection. She fears her own pain, so she dumps it on others. Every man who enters her orbit must become therapist, scapegoat, or target. Every woman she envies becomes a rival. She doesn't build. She extracts. Because true building requires roots. And the stupid woman is rootless, blown by trends, moods, collective outrage, and momentary feelings. This is not freedom. It is fragility masquerading as liberation. She is quick to shame others for perceived flaws, yet incapable of hearing truth herself. Her ego is paper-thin. Any criticism, no matter how constructive, feels like betrayal. She calls herself an empath, but her empathy is selective, reserved for those who validate her. Anyone who disagrees is labeled toxic, narcissistic, or insecure. It's a defense mechanism of the unevolved psyche. When you can't face your own darkness, you declare war on anyone who reflects it. And so she attracts war, not just in relationships, but in her body, in her nervous system, in her thoughts. Her life is a battlefield because her inner world is a war zone. Her emotions govern her like tyrants. She has not mastered them. She obeys them. She cries manipulation, but she manipulates. She screams betrayal, but she betrays herself daily by staying small, by staying bitter, by staying busy with everything but her healing. The archetype here is ancient. The disempowered feminine who has confused reaction for intuition. She thinks her triggers are truths. She mistakes anxiety for instinct. And because she never pauses to discern, she acts from fear while calling it boundaries, from avoidance while calling it standards. This woman fears stillness, but stillness is her medicine. It is in stillness that we meet the shadow, that we recognize the patterns not as fate, but as feedback, that we see the men we attract not as punishments, but as projections, mirrors of the masculine inside us, which we have neglected, wounded, or feared. A woman who refuses to integrate her inner masculine will either reject men or become a man in disguise. She'll scoff at femininity, calling it outdated, yet crave to be cherished. She'll emasculate with her words and wonder why men collapse or flee. This is not intelligence. This is unprocessed pain playing dress up. And the greatest tragedy? She doesn't have to stay here. She doesn't have to remain a reflection of her wounds. She could choose to grow, to sit in the fire, to shed her performative layers and meet the wild, wise woman underneath. The one who does not chase, control, or collapse. The one who commands by presence, not pretense. Who can be silent and still be sovereign. Who can receive without scheming and speak without screaming. But the path to her is steep. It requires the death of ego, the loss of identity built on applause, the courage to walk away from the sisterhood of victimhood, to release the story that pain makes her special, and step into the terrifying truth that healing will make her ordinary. But oh, how powerful that ordinariness becomes when it is built on truth, not performance. Because the woman who chooses wholeness over drama, humility over dominance, and peace over performance, she is rare. And the world may not praise her as loudly, but she no longer needs the noise. The most foolish women believe they are evolving when they are merely decorating their dysfunction. They swap toxic lovers for vision board soulmates, but never confront the attachment wounds that choose both. They trade club nights for cacao ceremonies, yet still seek applause in every gaze. They cover their chaos in language of healing, energy, boundaries, trauma work, but the work is cosmetic. Surface deep, their shadow remains unclaimed, festering beneath the affirmations and mantras like a serpent coiled in silence, waiting. Because no amount of spiritual jargon can redeem a woman who refuses to face herself. You'll find her in every space where healing is trending. She has crystals on her windowsill and chaos in her bed. She speaks of alignment, but sleeps with men who disrespect her. She rants about the divine feminine while waging war with her own womb, starving it of rest, of truth, of reverence. She's a contradiction wrapped in incense smoke. She speaks in circles, but never moves forward. This is the curse of unconscious mimicry, to imitate power, but never own it. She believes she is on a path of becoming, but she is only running in loops, avoiding the deep, slow, unglamorous process of soul alchemy. The kind of becoming that costs everything. Your story, your ego, your victimhood, your identity as someone owed something. That death is terrifying. It asks you to surrender the masks that once kept you safe. And the stupid woman is addicted to the mask. It is all she knows. She doesn't realize that her greatest fear, being unseen, is caused by her refusal to be authentic. Authenticity is costly. It alienates. It strips. It ruins comfort. It exposes where you've been a fraud. It asks you to say no to what flatters you, yes to what humbles you. It demands that you meet the broken girl inside and stop blaming your mother, your ex, the world, God, and not as a performance, not as a poetic caption on healing, but as a blood and bone reckoning in the mirror where no one claps and everything hurts. But that hurt is holy. The woman who runs from pain remains stupid. She never learns. She just recycles experiences, reliving her traumas in high heels and hashtags, screaming self-worth while abandoning herself in every decision. She wants a king, but moves like a court jester, mocking sacredness, avoiding silence, addicted to spectacle. And if she does find a king, she destroys him. Not because she's evil, but because she has not made peace with the masculine within. She will punish him for the father who abandoned her, test him like the ex who betrayed her, compare him to fantasies that never existed. Her feminine is not receptive, it is ravenous. It takes without gratitude, demands without giving, controls under the guise of care. This is not divine. It is dysregulated. It is not empowered. It is performative. You see, when a woman has not individuated, when she has not separated her true self from her collective conditioning, she becomes a puppet of culture, of trauma, of trends. She dresses the part of a conscious woman, but does not embody consciousness. She quotes Carl Jung, but cannot face her own complexes. She studies feminine archetypes, yet avoids becoming the archetype that requires sacrifice, the mother, the queen, the wise woman. Because each of those asks her to give up something she clings to. The mother archetype asks her to mature emotionally. No more tantrums, no more projection, no more blaming. The queen asks her to cultivate discernment, not demand submission. The wise woman, she asks for silence, stillness, simplicity. The death of ego, the end of the chase. But stupid women chase. Constantly. They chase men, status, peace, chaos, likes, attention, authority, rebellion. They're always running toward something while running away from themselves. They do not receive life, they hunt it. They do not become, they perform. And performance always collapses. Because eventually, even the most carefully curated woman must meet her own rawness. And if she has not prepared, if she has not practiced soul over spectacle, she will break under the weight of her own lie. But there is still time. Time to choose substance over story. Time to bow, not to a man, not to society, but to the ancient fire within. The fire that doesn't want followers. It wants truth. It wants to burn everything false until only the essence remains. And that essence? It is quiet. It is regal. It is holy. The woman who touches it no longer needs to scream. She no longer fights for space, because she is the space. She no longer confuses struggle with meaning. She no longer reacts to every ripple on the surface of life. She becomes the deep. There is a moment in every woman's life when she stands at the precipice of her own becoming. It is not glamorous. It is not filmed, posted, or celebrated. It is silent, brutal, unforgiving. It does not come with applause, it comes with loss. The loss of who she pretended to be. The shedding of every story she clung to for validation. The final death of the foolish girl who screamed to be chosen, instead of learning to choose. This moment is the great severing, the sacred rupture. And most women run from it. The stupid woman clings to the edge, terrified of the fall. She would rather remain in illusion than leap into the unknown. She fears the silence of her own soul. She fears what she will become when she stops playing small, loud, and chaotic. So she regresses. She numbs. She blames. She seduces. She posts something witty to distract herself from the aching in her chest. But that aching is the call, the initiation, the sacred unraveling. The wise woman hears it and answers. Not because she is better, but because she is ready. Ready to be stripped of all her false power, ready to meet the rawness underneath her performance, ready to be humbled, not by the world, but by her own reflection. She dares to ask the forbidden question, what if my pain isn't who I am? What if I built my identity around wounds I refuse to release? That question splits her open, and in the light that spills through the crack, she sees everything. She sees the men she chose not because they were worthy, but because they matched her unworthiness. She sees the mask she wore to be palatable, desirable, untouchable. She sees the games she played, the lies she told, the softness she weaponized, the strength she feared. She sees how she betrayed herself every time she sought love in places that required her to shrink. And then, the silence. Not the silence of loneliness, the silence of returning to her body, to her breath, to her boundaries, to her essence. It is here, finally, that the stupid woman dies. And in her place rises a woman of depth, of discernment, of direction. A woman who no longer chases chaos because peace is no longer foreign to her nervous system. A woman who no longer confuses being wanted with being valuable. A woman who no longer performs for men or mimics other women, but lives fiercely and softly from the inside out. She becomes sovereign, not in defiance, but in devotion. Devotion to her own becoming, to the kind of love that doesn't require theatrics, to friendships that are mirrors, not masks, to solitude that nourishes, not punishes, to truth, even when it humbles her. This woman walks into rooms differently. She does not seek to dominate, nor does she apologize for her presence. She simply is, magnetic not because she tries, but because she no longer hides. She speaks with clarity, listens with depth, and loves with boundaries. She is not reactive because she has nothing to prove. She is not arrogant because she has met her own darkness. And she is not bitter because she has forgiven, not for them, but for herself. She no longer needs to be understood. She understands herself. This is what the stupid woman will never know. That true power is not in being desired, envied, or applauded. It is in being anchored, in knowing your worth so deeply that nothing, no man, no trend, no betrayal, can unseat it. It is in letting go of the illusion that the world owes you something and choosing instead to give from your overflow, not your emptiness. Because when you stop trying to be impressive and start trying to be real, everything shifts. Your relationships change. Your energy softens. Your presence deepens. You begin to attract from essence, not ego. You begin to love without attachment. You begin to speak without fear. You begin to walk through the world with the quiet elegance of someone who no longer needs to defend their throne, because they're the throne. This is the end of stupidity and the beginning of sovereignty. No more screaming. No more scrambling. No more soul-deep insecurity masked as seduction, chaos, or wit. Just a woman. Whole, rooted, radiant. No longer waiting to be chosen. No longer asking permission. No longer confusing survival with identity. She is still. She is fierce. She is free. And the woman who knows her worth doesn't chase. She chooses.